Today, we are ranking the bosses of AI Limit worst to best in 3 tiers. We'll have the bad fights, the average fights, and the good fights. Starting off at the very bottom of the list with Necro, Wanderer of the Undersea. Bro, are we kidding here? This has to be the most lazily designed boss I've ever seen in my life. Necro, Wanderer of Undersea, walks around at a snail's pace. He honestly barely moves. All the while, he'll summon Necros to attack you. Can't really ignore the ones that he summons either because they are some of the more dangerous enemies you'll find in AI Limit. This doesn't feel like a boss fight, it's just like a horde or zombie mode or something like that. Eventually his dumbass falls over and you kill him. AI Limit was a hidden gem. I really liked this game, so it pains me to call this lazy, but if I'm one thing, it's honest, and this was a rough look. The Scavenger Patriarch feels like a mini boss, and this is a good example of my issue with a good chunk of the AI Limit boss fights. Scavenger Patriarch attacks with a big ass hammer in one hand and a gun in the other. He doesn't do much, you just have to avoid the hammer swings that are pretty easy to see coming. If you do get lulled to sleep, the gun or his grab might catch you off guard. But if you've played these games before, he will go down without much trouble. Scavenger Patriarch's biggest offense is just how bland he is. There's just not anything crazy going on visually, and the soundtrack is shared with some other bosses. His moveset is simple and doesn't feel special to go against. Bottom line is this is an encounter that feels like it would be a mini boss in a different game, but here it passes off as a boss fight. Aether the Father does not feel like a mini boss, and nor should he, because this is one of the final bosses of AI Limit depending on what ending you do. I liked the whole thing he's got going on here. He's like a sci-fi, artificial intelligence, godly figure. That's all good, but the fight itself was very awkward. He's just laying curled up, so his movements are a bit weird and makes the few melee attacks he does have hard to read. And of course he has a lot of area denials and AoEs that come out of the ground that felt like they were just randomly thrown at you, one after another with no rhyme or reason to them. I felt like I had no time to react to a lot of these, but thankfully it didn't matter. Look how much I'm getting hit in this footage. I just face tanked everything and it barely was doing damage to me. This entire fight felt awkward and it was hard to tell what was going on and what would happen next. It's kind of a mess. I didn't like it for its gameplay. I always get pretty biased towards presentation and the fact this did do a good job of looking and feeling like a final boss. Those things will place him ahead of the Scavenger Patriarch, but not by much. It fails in every other aspect. The Guardians of the Tree are a boss fight I can see being a total nightmare if I had to play this by myself, which I would have preferred to do here. Real quick, there are some NPC questlines in AI Limit that can't be advanced unless you summon that NPC to a boss fight. This was one of the 2 examples where I had to do that, and I hate this. I want to learn the fight and overcome it the old-fashioned way, by myself, on my own. Nonetheless, the Guardians of the Tree are pretty aggressive as far as AI Limit bosses go, and the arena is just a wide open space which would make it hard to separate them on your own. But again, in my experience with the boss, I did have help. I ended up taking them down pretty easily, so we may as well get into the other fight I was forced to summon out of the way too. Eunomia, the Resplendent Bishop, I was also forced to summon for, and this one I'm even more annoyed about. This is one of the most mechanically engaging fights in the game, as you can probably tell. The hammer swings and electric spells made this a big step up in challenge, and we even have a phase 2 in this one. Fortunately, I was forced to hear my dumbass annoying companion yell every time she swung her sword. It was awful. I already hated her for ruining what seemed like a sick boss fight by making me summon her, so I made that yell nails on a chalkboard. Listen guys, I know some people like summoning. Good for you if that's how you want to play. I do not care. But I feel like I couldn't even judge these fights properly because this is just not how I like to play these games. If I ever do replay AI Limit, I can see Eunomia skyrocketing up the rankings, but the Guardians of the Tree would probably be in about the same spot. Next up we have the average fights of AI Limit. These are all enjoyable and felt like a step up to cap off a game's level, but in a bigger budget Souls-like, these would be considered pretty subpar compared to those boss fights. Again, this was a good game, but I do have mixed feelings on the bosses. I would like to ask if you made it this far and are enjoying this video so far, consider liking it as well as subscribing for my future content. Let's get into the average AI Limit boss fights. The Saint is an angelic robot that sends electric orbs at you and fires some beams. He also has some melee attacks from those metal wing things on his back. Everything here can be reacted to pretty easily, but it is a cool looking boss, and it takes place on a bridge. And I always love fighting on a bridge. They know they cooked with this visual design because we see it a couple of other times as well, like with the Wind Colossan. The Wind Colossan is an interesting one. He attacks you with similar attacks as the Saint, but he also has a very dangerous wind attack. That's the one to really look out for because it will blow you right off the edge of the arena to your death. Luckily, we have the coolest NPC in the game here to save the day. Stone, the Coffin Bearer. I thought this guy was a badass character, which is probably why I remember this boss so favorably. To catch up to the Wind Colossus, you want to walk behind Stone as he shields you from the wind attacks. Once you close the distance, he really does minimal damage, so it didn't feel cheesy using him in the fight either. Once you do close distance, you tear the Wind Colossus apart, and it feels pretty earned after you reach him. Do this once or twice until the fight ends. Not the craziest thing ever, but I like they went for something different, and Stone is a cool character, so it was a good boss. The Cleansing Knight also has a very good design. He's like part robot, part spider, part human maybe? I'm not sure, but he fights with some wide sweeps and some beams of light that come out of his weapon that are pretty easy to dodge. There is some flashing cool looking AoEs going on here as well. For me, this boss was similar to the Scavenger Patriarch in that he didn't have too many insane mechanics going on, but he did do two things differently that I thought made him significantly better. One, his health pool was a lot bigger, so this was a long fight for me. Also, he just has some cooler looking attacks, and that matters. This feels like a boss. The presentation here is good for AI Limit's world. Nothing in the Cleansing Knight's kit stands out as awful, but nothing is especially good here either. Necro the Panic Reaper is a stronger version of the Necros we've been fighting. The way he floats around the arena is pretty sick, and his scissor hand attacks had off timings, but overall, you can dodge them without too much trouble. There are two main things to look out for here. One is to the pure status effect that he causes on those scissor attacks. I keep calling them scissor attacks, but they're really just his arms. Pierce damage builds up as a status meter, and once it fills, you take huge damage. Essentially, it works how Bleed does in Souls games, and these Necro guys always seem to give you a really bad pierce damage. The other thing you want to look out for is the screams that can cause infection, which cause your sync rate to plummet. But my strategy was just to hang in tough against it when he does CL and just unload on him. It felt like a good trade-off for me. I was able to get in a ton of DPS that made up for it. The Panic Reaper is another one of those boss fights that in most games would probably qualify as a mini-boss. He's a step up from the enemies before him. I just wish there was more to these end-of-level encounters than what we saw in AI Limit's bosses. Another one of those kind of fights is the Three-Face Partner. The Three-Face Partner is a pretty fun encounter. His sight attacks feel intuitive to dodge, but if you are not aggressive enough, he has a bunch of projectile attacks he will send at you. But if you stay too aggressive, he'll spin his weapon in your face for huge damage. Finding the balance is key here and was a cool aspect of this fight and the key to taking him down. He's solid, like his weapon too. Lore the Lost Lancer is the first real boss of the game, and he's a very good one. Lore has one of my favorite designs in this game, and he attacks you with a giant lance in a pretty straightforward fight that feels like a stronger version of the enemies you've fought so far. Everything here feels like it's the real tutorial boss, not whatever the sewer cleaner was supposed to be. I didn't even bother talking about him because it's just a standard enemy. So this is a solid introduction to what you're probably going to expect in the boss fights in AI Limit. What ranks Lore so highly though is the shock you get at mid-health. He lets out a huge roar and gets rid of the lance. His moveset is now completely different. He's on all fours and attacks like a wild animal with his claws and charges. The shift was pretty wild for the game's first boss, and it threw me off big time. As you can see, I'm face tanking most of it because the timings were so different I just kept getting hit. If I were to guess, this was heavily inspired by Father Gascoigne in Bloodborne. It's a similar shift that shocks you for such an early game boss. I do have one issue with Lore the Lost Lancer, and it's that he sets pretty unrealistic expectations for the rest of the bosses. It's pretty disappointing when your first major boss mogs most of the rest of the roster. But that'll do it for the average fights of AI Limit, and now we're getting into the good fights. These are more of what I would expect a boss to be like in a Souls-like, and the final few bosses are genuinely great boss fights in any game. But first, let's start with, oddly enough, a great gank fight. With all my criticism of the boss fights in AI Limit, you'd probably be surprised to find out one of its best fights is actually a gank done exceptionally well. The Hunter Squad fight begins against this big-ass dude known as the Brawler. After some time, he is joined by the Hunter Squad shooter who attacks more from range, and finally a scout who is your rogue assassin type of archetype. I really enjoyed the moveset of the Brawler and Rogue to the point I would have liked to see them as individual bosses. Once you take them down though, it's time to cross blades with the Hunter Squad leader, and this can be a bit tricky because by this point you're probably low on resources as well. He fights with a dagger in one hand and a blade in another with some fire in his attacks that give this some flair. I think gank bosses are done best in Souls games when they're handled like this, where they enter the fight one at a time. If you never played this but did play Lies of P, it's like the first Black Rabbit Brotherhood fight is what I'm saying. And on that note, I'm torn, guys. On one hand, I think these games should be judged on their own merits, but on the other, if they're going to take so much inspiration from Software's games, I can't help but point this stuff out. What do I mean exactly? The Hunter Squad leader's movements look extremely similar to the Abyss Watchers with a sci-fi aesthetic, and it plays very similarly to that iconic Phase 2 as well. But hey, it made for a good boss, so I don't mind. Now this is what a boss fight should look like. Fire Master the Inspector and all of the following fights nail presentation. So continuing with the good tier, we're done with those mini boss feeling fights. Fire Master has a lot of lightning attacks that come from the sky, has some orbs he'll send at you, as well as attacking with his weapon occasionally in melee. At around half health, he has an insane AoE that you gotta run out of, and then, at least from my fights with him, he healed immediately after, forcing you to get in quick and unleash on him to counteract this. The Fire Master isn't the most mobile. He doesn't charge at you or run across the arena or anything. His main way of moving is to teleport away and then use some spells to keep you off of him for a few moments at a time. I never felt like I was chasing him too long. This was a solid step up in mechanics, and we finally got unique music for a boss fight again, along with great visuals I've come to expect in a Souls boss. It's good shit. But visuals and mechanics are turned way up in our next fight. And next we have the Stygian Queen of Woe. I'm going to call her the Queen of Woe because I can't pronounce that first word. I'm not the greatest. But the boss fight itself was very good. This is one of those games in which challenging fights easily. In phase 1, the queen fights like a sorcerer, throwing orbs that cause infection at you, as well as shooting lasers while moving throughout the arena. The health bar is pretty large though, so when this boss transitions into phase 2, it's pretty surprising. Now she's on all fours and attacks much more erratically, and whereas you were chasing the queen down before this, now you're going to be the one that's on your heels. There's still some ranged attacks here, but she's much more of a mobile melee fighter. Once you're at the end, she lets out a huge scream, and Orisa says to take cover. If you don't, you're going to be one shot and it's game over. But I think this was communicated well enough to you with what was happening. Orisa, the player character, talks for the only time during any boss fight to warn you, while the arena looks ready to blow and the walls pop up during this. The Queen of Woe is a very cinematic fight, and I really like this one. But Chiron the Nurturer was AI limit at its most cinematic. This was an interesting one that is the game's secret final boss, and it blows Aethar the Father out of the fucking water. I wasn't exactly sure on the lore going on here, but the OST had this awesome triumphant feeling. Chiron the Nurturer shields herself throughout the fight, and you have to break these while you fight her bird and avoid tons of area denial spells on the ground. This suffered from the classic AI limit problem of being too easy because none of the attacks hit hard enough to be any sort of threat, but it didn't bother me here because this was all about the spectacle. Chiron is a great ending to the game. I'm no expert in game design, but if they were struggling to come up with in-depth mechanics and wanted to play it safe in that sense, I would have liked to see more bosses like this where they leaned into the spectacle. But either way, I'm glad they did it for this one at least. But these last two fights are genuinely great boss fights that are on par with any From Software's good fights. We'll start with Ursula, the Hunter of Bladers. What a fight. I included the Hunter of Bladers as part of this as well because it's mostly the same, just a lesser version. Also, on that subject, I decided not to include the boss gauntlet at the end of the game because it's just a bunch of reskins. Anyway, Ursula is supposed to be this game's super boss, and she's a pretty good challenge. She starts off the fight with a katana that has some fire attacks mixed into it. After she takes enough damage, she takes out a second one. She's fast on her feet and you will have to react quickly to her attacks, but there is no one single attack that stands out as overly dangerous. It's an intuitive feeling fight that comes down to a 1v1 sword fight. But at half health, shit gets real and she becomes Ursula the Mutated. She still fights katana in one hand, but a massive claw in the other that can deal pierce damage as well as throw fire at you. She is much quicker and this is an extremely frantic feeling boss fight. She wails out in pain after certain attacks, and in this case it adds to the fight a lot because what I love here is how throughout this it feels like it's escalating and escalating, getting more tense and more tense. These kind of fights that go for that feeling are rare, where you start off cool and calculated to end up struggling to survive. I know a lot of people did not play AI Limit, so if you want yet another comparison, this feels like very Lady Maria-esque with how she's desperate to take you down at any cost, and how the whole encounter just rises and rises in intensity. So yeah, across the Souls-like genre, I'd say this is comfortably an A-tier fight, and a class of its own alongside Loskid, who comes in at number 1. Loskid is a legend in AI Limit's world. I didn't follow the lore too closely, but everyone builds her up throughout the game, and I was extremely happy to see her live up to it. Phase 1, you fight her with her spear, and already, what a great arena and design this is. I adore the whole heavenly and holy aesthetic it has. Lightning comes out of most of her attacks, and she's extremely mobile and fast. I especially love the lightning circle that comes across all around her that was well telegraphed, and you just had to dodge into it at the right moment. It's a great showdown, but this is all about Phase 2. Loskid sheds her armor and takes out a great sword. She is faster and way more aggressive. Her sword will get stronger as the fight goes on, and you'll know it because she's telling you as it happens. She talks a lot during the fight. I always like when bosses do this. Should be more common. But you will have to survive against her sword swings and delay attacks, along with her hammer arm thing. I always love when a boss has just an oh shit kind of attack, and Loskid has one of my favorite all-time attacks now. I think that's what gives her the edge for me over Ursula, because both had fun movesets to fight against, but this signature move of Laskin is just unreal. It's on screen now. Laskin and Ursula are fought at a much faster pace than anything else in the game, and it worked wonders. They clear the rest of this roster by quite a bit, but I will give the slight edge to Laskin, like I said. So that's my ranking. I really liked AI Limit, but the bosses were not exactly a strength. Don't let that stop you from playing. The level design was amazing and had a very unique atmosphere. So if that was the focus they were going for, I totally respect it. But hey, a boss ranking gets more views, which is why I went with this one first. Its boss roster is nothing like Wu Chang Fallen Feathers. My ranking of those bosses is on screen now. Love you guys. See you in the next one.